Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good afternoon. Well, kind of evening for some people, kind of late afternoon for me, as it's, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. Let me push my buttons. There we go. I always push those buttons. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour or so. Got a great guest tonight. I'm real excited to have her on. I have a little bit of a link to her. Not really a link, but something in common to her in a way, even though it wasn't directly me, but something kind of in common. Anyway, I am the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of Sacramento, California. We have 35 people. I'm not going to say stationed up and down the state, but located within the state of California. Almost every county we have at least one or two people in, to help people with their paranormal issues. That's our job. It's to help people and educate. We don't charge for our services. We come out, we try to help you as much as we can. And our membership runs the gamut. We've got attorneys on our membership. We've got former police officers that were hostage negotiators. We've got psychologists on staff. We've got journalists on staff. The whole gamut. We have a couple Native American friends on staff as well to help us with cases that involve Native American grounds. So we kind of run the gamut. We're a full service paranormal team. We've been around for a long time, almost 25 years. It's getting there. Been doing this for a while. Anyhow, I want to welcome you all to California Haunts Radio. We do this Sunday through Friday. We spend an hour with you each night. Sundays we sit down and we read a paranormal themed book. Right in the middle of Anna Maria Manello's The Way Through the Woods. And after that, I just might read the Mojave Incident. We'll see what happens. But anyway, back to our show tonight. Oh yes, one more thing, YouTube. If you're watching, it's going to be like that today. Sorry, I had powdered donuts before I came on, so off I go. If you're watching from YouTube, please click on the little ghost down in the bottom right-hand corner that has the magnifying glass and the Sherlock Holmes hat. That'll make you a subscriber to our YouTube. So if you look through YouTube, you can see we've got more than 220 shows on there that we've done. And they're all varying topics, just like tonight is a completely different topic from all the paranormal stuff we've been doing. I love doing different topics. I'm a journalist. I'm a photojournalist by trade. I love varying my topics, and I love covering news items and everything. In fact, you might even catch me on a night where something's going on here in Sacramento, and I might just cover it just like KCRA3 would or something. You never know what's going to happen with me. But that's what I do. So please subscribe. I really appreciate it. Also, we're nonprofit. So everything you see here comes out of my pocket. So if something breaks, boom, I got to pay for it. Just like the internet, all that other stuff that goes with doing the show, it all comes out of my pocket. So if you could help me out a little bit, that'd be great. And you could do that at paypal.me at California Haunts, or even Venmo, California Haunts, straight through. But anyway, we'll get on topic now. My grandmother and grandfather came over from Mexico way back. I don't even know. Somewhere around, I think, my sister will probably kick me for this, the 1930s, maybe the 1940s. They both came over from Mexico. And the first job they got was working on one of the Indian reservations, and they were cutting hair. And as I was growing up, my mother would tell me stories that my grandmother would tell her about her working on the reservations. In fact, my mother knew a couple of songs, and I heard my grandmother sing a couple of songs too. I have no idea what tribe it was with, that they worked with, but the songs are ingrained in my head, even to this day. I'll start humming them, But that's kind of like my link, because our guest tonight spent quite a long time with the Navajo. And I'm so excited to talk to her about that. When I went into congestive heart failure, I was trying to figure out diets to go on. And I decided to go on a Native American type diet. So I bought these cookbooks. And of course, my cardiologist wanted to see what I was going to do. So I took these cookbooks into my cardiologist, which she okayed me to do. So I was making stuff like the breads and stuff like the Native Americans had been making, and that helped me. I came out of heart failure within 6 months after starting that diet. So there's something to this, and so we're going to talk to her about that. What she experienced living among the Navajo, and how she brought that experience into her into her practice with patients, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So without further ado, and like I said, I'm excited. Let's see who's in the chat room first. Who do we got? Jennifer, welcome, welcome, welcome. I know, and it was the powdered donuts, those little ones, those little Debbie things, little Debbie devils is what they are. Anyway, that's enough about donuts. Oh my God, I have a sweet tooth that goes beyond anything you can imagine. I have to have some kind of sweet during the day. All right, let me get my guest on. There we go. Hello, how you doing? You can tell we're laid back here.
It's great. I think you lead a very exciting life.
Sucking down powdered donuts. Oh yeah. How are you?
I'm having a really good day in spite of it all.
Fantastic. Now I'm fascinated to talk to you. I heard you on the other show. I read part of your book. Because like I said, that connection is there because my grandmother and grandfather did work with, I don't know, the Apache. I don't know which tribe it was.
Probably the Yaquis, because they live near Mexico. The Yaqui Indians.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, if you look at photos, black and white photos of my grandmother, you would take her for a Native American.
Well, she probably has Native American blood. Think of all the Mexicans. So many of them have a Native American blood in them.
Yeah.
Probably your grandparents certainly did.
Yeah. And it's funny because, like Time Life came out with that whole series, which I read cover to cover. And when you look at the photos of the Native Americans in there, they look like my grandmother.
Yes. That's very exciting. So that means you're part Native yourself. In fact, I can actually see it.
Because we're unaware of it, but somewhere along the line, yeah. There's got to be some blood in there. But it's shocking how much she looks like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, tell me about you, because you spent all that time with the Navajo. I'm so fascinated by that.
Well, it's just, I've always been guided by an inner compass that tells me what to do, even if it doesn't make a bit of sense. I mean, when I decided to do that, to go out in the middle of nowhere to teach at boarding school, my friends and family thought I'd lost my mind, and they asked me to explain why I was doing that. And I said the truth. I said, you know what? I don't know, but I have a knowing inside that this is what I must do, even though I can't explain it. And all my life has been guided like that. It's a sort of an inner knowing. And the few times when I didn't listen to that inner guidance, I really regretted it. It caused me horrendous suffering when I didn't listen. Two times I didn't listen, and they were disastrous. So to all your listeners, be sure to follow your inner wisdom. It's important.
If I followed my inner wisdom drinks alcohol.
Well, at least it doesn't do sugar, but alcohol is just like sugar, though.
That's like my guardian angels. I think are alcoholics too, but we're not going to go down that alley, okay? But by this time, so when you initially started what were you teaching?
I was teaching 4th grade, but everything turned into an English lesson because the kids had reached 4th grade and didn't speak English. I found out why. At first, I thought, how can you get to 4th grade and not speak English? And so here's why. First of all, the white teachers were not interested in them, didn't even like them. They're just waiting to get their government check to get retired. They were older. They were so bored, so uninterested, didn't know the first thing about Navajo culture. The students picked that up. And so, how are you going to be motivated when you think your teacher doesn't even care about you? And then the learning materials were totally irrelevant to these people's lives. They were Dick and Jane. Can you imagine? Dick
Yeah.
and Jane, that meant nothing to them. They had no motivation. And then the third reason is because many of them had to lose whole years at a time staying home helping with the brand new baby or help herd sheep or something. So it was a very erratic, inconsistent education. So what happened when I first arrived, I think they thought, oh, just another white person, you know, doesn't care about us. And I was trying so hard to connect with them, and they wouldn't even look at me. And they looked down at their desk, and I was so frustrated. After a week, I was ready to give up. And in fact, I called my father. I said, this isn't working out. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I can't connect with the students. And so he said, thank God, he said, you shouldn't leave after a week. You don't know the people, you don't know their culture, you don't know their land, you don't know anything about them.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you stay there 3 months and then make up your mind? And so I thought, oh, okay. And that very next day, my Navajo teacher aide, who was came from a very famous family. Her father was a code talker in World War II, Carl Gorman. So she
Wow.
lived on army bases. So she, even though 50 years ago, the Navajos were very traditional at that time, she was very knowledgeable about the white world. She spoke fluent English and she was traditional at the same time. And so she had a foot in both worlds. So she saw me struggle and she saw how much I really wanted to reach the students. So she came out of her shyness, because in that era, Navajos were very sort of respectful and shy and stuff. And she said, I need to tell you about Navajo culture and these students, because I can tell, unlike the other teachers, you're really interested. You really want to know. So she started explaining all the things that I misunderstood. She said, the kids don't look at you because, number one, they're shy. They're
Mm-hmm.
boarding school kids. They live in remote areas. They're not used to white people. And two, they're showing respect. If they looked right in your eyes, in their culture, that would be extremely rude, or they were showing anger. But they show respect by not looking you straight in the eyes. Once they get to know you and like you, they will look into your eyes. And I said, oh my God, I've made so many mistakes. And she said, you pointed at a boy and asked him a question based on the seating chart, and he cringed. Yeah, I said, I noticed that. Why'd he do that? I just pointed. She said, you never point in Navajo culture. That makes people stand out and vulnerable to witchcraft and so forth. You point with your lips. Anyway, she spent hours educating me, hours and hours. And she invited me to her home and we talked more over dinner. And she said, look, what's going to make a really huge difference in breaking the ice is if you let me teach you a few words of Navajo. White people, they don't even know how to say hello in Navajo. They lived here 10 years. They don't know a single word. If you just learn, let me teach you just a few words and watch what happens. So she taught me how to say, hello, my children. My name is Erica Elliott. What's your name and where do you live? And oh my God, it's the hardest language I've ever heard. No wonder it was the only code in World War II that was never broken. There's sounds in there that don't exist in English. And there are glottal stops and nasal sounds. I mean, it's almost like Chinese or something. Very tonal and guttural, and and everybody sounds like they're mad at each other. They're not. They're just saying hello, and it sounds like they're saying something bad. And so I practiced almost all night in front of the mirror. It was so hard. The next morning, I went into the classroom and I said, I probably totally butchered the language. I said, Yat eshal chine, she Erica Elliott, and everybody looked up at me for the first time and had eye contact with me. And the room was totally silent. And then suddenly a girl put her hand over her mouth and started giggling. And then the whole class burst out laughing. And I don't even know if I said anything right, but that moment was the beginning of the most wonderful love affair between me and the students. It was just, oh my God, it got richer and richer and richer. And the boldest boy in the class who spoke the most English came up to my desk, Billy Begay, and he couldn't say Elliott, that was too hard. He said, Elliott, take me home. I said, what? Take you home? And he said, oh, that means yes in Navajo. And I looked at my teacher aide, Donna Scott, and I said, hey, can I take him home? And she said, yeah, you can check him out on the weekend out of the boarding school. Nobody does it, but you can do it. You just have to fill out a lot of papers. And I said, Billy, do you want me to check you out of the boarding school and take you home? Oh, I said, well, okay. And that was beginning of a custom. Every weekend I checked out a different kid from the boarding school, took him way into the remote canyon, gorgeous canyon. And with Billy Begay, I had the time of my life. We rode bareback with his brothers. The family was so nice to me, even though I couldn't understand a word they said. They were so nice and loving to me and had me spend the night there. And anyway, so as this progressed, word got all around the school that I was doing this. And after Billy Begay, that Monday, I said, let's not use these Dick and Jane books anymore. Let's make up our own material. And for some reason, the principal really liked me, and he let me get away with breaking all the rules. It was amazing. And so we made our own curriculum. So when we took a trip, we'd write about it in English. So that was the beginning. I said, draw a picture of me and Billy Begay's, my visit with Billy Begay, and underneath put 2 sentences. Most people, they didn't know what that meant. But anyway, one kid drew this beautiful picture of the canyon, which is gorgeous. And it was of a horse running through the canyon. And there was a white girl on top holding the mane for dear life and with her ponytail flying straight out. And underneath it said, my teacher, Teechir. And so, but that was the beginning of us creating our own teaching materials. And so what happened was the more I did this kind of thing, the faster they learned English. They wanted desperately for me to know about their life. So here's something almost magical. Since you're a paranormal station, I have lots of paranormal stuff to tell you about my time. But what was so magical, Charlotte, is that here they came to the 4th grade not speaking English. And by the end of the year, because they were so impassioned wanting me to know about their lives, they learned English so fast. And they were very smart. And those white teachers told me they couldn't learn. I mean, that is shameful.
Yes.
These were very bright kids. They just didn't like being mistreated. And so here's the magical thing. At the end of the school year, there was a regional speech contest, and I decided to enter 3 of the students who spoke the best English and wrote the best English. They won.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's
and
amazing.
Charlotte, I thought nobody's going to believe this. So I cut out the newspaper article of the 3 kids. This is from 50 years ago. And I still have it. I still have that newspaper article. So you want me to tell you my first real paranormal experience?
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. So many of the families told me, just in a kidding way, they wanted to adopt me. And they gave me a Navajo name. It's Asafachi, which means Navajo woman with red skin. And I said, why red skin? They said, because you're sunburned all the time. So I was called a redskin. And so anyway, so one of the families that, quote, adopted me was a member of the Native American Church. And that is a formal way of saying the peyote church. They don't use the word peyote. They call it plant medicine. That's what they call it. And it's never used for recreation. That's shunned upon. It's used strictly for spiritual growth and healing and prayer. And so this family called me like their daughter, their sister. When you really like somebody in the Navajo culture, you call them by kinship term. That's because kinship is the most important thing in their life. It's not making a lot of money. It's not being the best at this and that. It's having your family. Your family is the most important thing. And so when they call me by these kinship terms and asked me to call them by kinship terms, it was an expression of love. And so so I was supposed to call the person Shema, my mother. And she's the one who invited me to the next peyote ceremony. It was to heal a little baby who was terribly sick, didn't respond to Western medicine at all, was not getting well. And so anyway, so she told me I could not wear white man's clothes. I had to wear totally traditional Navajo clothes. So I was dressed like beautifully in this velvet shirt, satin skirt, and tons of turquoise jewelry and silver. I looked like I was going to a Navajo prom. And so anyway, so part of the ceremony, it's all prayer and singing and so forth. And part of the ritual is to smoke this sacred tobacco that they gathered from plants on the San Francisco peaks, which is now unfortunately a ski area. But anyway, so what you do is you inhale, you exhale, and then you pray in Navajo and you pass it on. And I had only been on the reservation for a month, so I could say, how many sheep do you have? Where do you live? How old are you? And that's about it. I couldn't say much. And because it's important you know that because of what I'm about to say. I truly barely spoke Navajo in those days. Barely. And so anyway, so they all did that. And then when my Navajo mother did it, she prayed. She was right next to me. Then she handed me the sacred tobacco. And she said in English, whispered, "Just pass it on." And I didn't pass it on. By the way, I was already very much full of the plant medicine. It comes in 3 forms: in the bud, in the tea, and the powder. And it tastes really awful. I had trouble not to throw up. And so my Navajo mother said, if you throw up, that's the evil coming out. I didn't want people to think I was evil. So I kind of kept it in. Anyway, so I kept it and I inhaled, exhaled, and then I prayed in Navajo. I prayed in Navajo, a prayer I'd never heard of before. And while I was speaking this fluent Navajo, I thought, wow, I think I'm dreaming. This can't possibly be true. There's no way that this is true. This is from the medicine is making me hallucinate. But then I said to myself, but somehow this is more real than real life. And I was saying that dialogue the whole time I was praying in Navajo. I thought, wow, this stuff is really strong. And then I passed it on and everybody was staring at me. And so, but anyway, then the next thing that got passed around is a water drum. It's in a metal container and there's water in it. And then the hide is stretched over and it gives a haunting sound. And the drumming is like the beat of your heart, the heartbeat. And then you sing a song. And so the exact same thing happened. My Navajo mother, Shema, she sang her song and then she passed it to me and she said, pass it on. And I didn't pass it on. I was drumming and I was saying, hey, nay, younga, hey, nay, yo, hey, yo. Oh my God. I'm singing a song I don't even know. I had never heard of before. A prayer song. Again, I thought, geez, I must be incredibly stoned or something. And I passed it on. Anyway, just to make a long story short, when morning came and all that had worn off, all the medicine had worn off, we filed out, we touched our forehead with the ground, and we fanned ourselves with a eagle feather fan, and then we went into the neighboring cinder block house where some of the women had stayed up all night to make breakfast. And we sat on a sheet on the floor, and there's a big feast laid out of mutton stew and fry bread and canned peaches. And when everything was quiet, then the roadman, which is the medicine man, they call it roadman, the people who run the peyote ceremonies,
Mhm.
he looked right at me, right in my eyes, and he started talking Navajo nonstop. And I was really uncomfortable because I didn't know what he was saying. And he was looking right at me. I had no idea what he's saying. And he kept talking. And then he'd wait for me to answer. I didn't know what to say. And then he'd talk again, wait for me to answer. And finally, I sheepishly said, um, I don't really speak Navajo. And everybody burst out laughing. And then he said, "You sure talked up a storm last night." And
Wow.
so, Charlotte, how do you explain that?
I have no clue. I guess the gods decided to help you out.
People always ask me that. How they say, how do you think it happened? I say, well, truthfully, I don't know. But then some people have made up their own explanations. Like a physicist one time heard me and he said, well, in advanced physics, like quantum physics, there is no past, no future. It's all right now. And he said something about how it's all out there, but we can't have access it with our normal consciousness because it's very limited. And
Right.
when you're under the influence, there are no limits. You have no limits. And so you can pull out of anywhere anything you need. And so I thought, okay, I'll take that explanation. And so Charlotte, you how would you explain it?
I think the whole point of peyote is the visions that go with it. And it's one of the things. And I just think that it opens you up, like he's in a way the physicist is correct. It opened you up to the point that your psychic part opened up and something else came through and helped you out.
Yeah. And Charlotte, can I tell you one more paranormal thing that happened?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the kids in my class, we became so friendly with each other, and one of the kids said, Miss, they were talking English now. They said, Miss Elliott, still call me Elliott. Miss Elliott, you have a goiter. And I didn't have a goiter. Goiter was when your whole thyroid is swollen from
Mhm.
iodine deficiency. And they had that was pretty common 50 years ago because they didn't have iodized salt. But I had a lump right here on the right side under my jaw, and it was very hard, like a rock, and it was growing. And like many of my patients, they just want to ignore it and hope it goes away. And that was me. And
Mhm.
I was 23, and and didn't know a first thing about medicine, and I mean Western medicine. And I felt it, and I thought, wow, it's big enough for her to even notice. That must be pretty big. Maybe I should do something about it. So as it kept growing, I started getting scared. So I took a day off from teaching and I drove for 2 hours to the nearest charity hospital called Sage Memorial Hospital. And the internist saw me. I was really scared to be in a hospital. It smelled bad, like disinfectant. Who would ever guess that I'd become a doctor? It was
Mhm.
like, ugh, I don't like this place at all. It's very sterile. It smells bad. And so, anyway, so he said it really looks like it's cancer
Oh
of your
boy.
lymph gland. He said we're going to have to schedule a biopsy. And so I was so frightened. I said thank you and goodbye that I left and didn't come back. Just like some of my patients are so scared like that.
Mhm.
You know, and I mean, I'm glad I in the end that I followed my inner compass because of what I'm about to tell you. Because if I had gone the regular way, I would have missed out on something pretty darn life changing. And so anyway, my teacher aide Donna Scott said, "Oh, there's a medicine man who can probably help you." And she was giving me directions how to find him on the weekend. She said, "You go down the wash and you come to this large sagebrush on the left, and then you go a few more yards, and then there'll be two pinyons, and you turn left there, and then you go." I mean, the instructions were really difficult. I was so lost. And I finally found him, and he took a look at it, and then to my great disappointment, he said it wasn't his specialty. But he said there is a Hopi guy who probably could help you. So I took another day off, and I mean it's a real day's work to find these people. And I finally found the Hopi medicine man. He was out herding sheep. It took me a whole day to find him, and to my dismay, he said it's not his specialty. And so then I told my Navajo family, the one who belonged to the Native American church, I said, it's hopeless that none of these people, it's their specialty. You know, I don't want to go back to that Bilagana, that means white man, that Bilagana doctor. I'm too scared. And they said, "Oh, it's no problem. We'll have a ceremony for you. The roadman will take care of it." And they said, "But you know, we'll give this as a gift, but we have to share it with somebody because it's expensive. It means butchering a whole sheep. And instead of bank accounts, their money is in their sheep and their goats and their horses. That's their wealth. And so butchering a whole sheep for a ceremony is a big deal. And then they have to pay the roadman on top of that. So they shared it with another family with a sick baby. And so anyway, I in the ceremony, I was so focused on the baby. I took such an interest in the baby, what the baby was doing, that I forgot that this ceremony was for me too. I completely forgot. And I watched the baby get better and better and better and better. And we sang and prayed and the usual stuff all night. We prayed all night, and the baby was fine afterwards and gurgling and looking at its mom and smiling and everything. And then we filed out and did our thing and went to have breakfast. And we're sitting around on that sheet with the food laid out, and everybody stared at me. I wanted to know, what are they looking at? And I was looking to my right, to my left, and no, they're looking at me. I thought, why are they looking at me like that? And then I remembered, and my hand flew up, and the mass was gone. And to this day, 50 years later, if you watch me like over the course of the day, you'll see me go like this to this day, making sure it hasn't come back. It's become a habit. Ever
Wow.
since that time, I just couldn't believe it. And so I was going like this all the time. Like it was gone. Charlotte,
That's
what do you
incredible.
make of that, Charlotte?
I think magic works its ways. I think natural healing does work in a lot of cases. My grandmother was a curandera as well,
Oh, wow.
and I didn't experience any of her stuff, but my mother did. You know, she had
Wow.
stories about my grandmother doing healing rituals and stuff.
Wow.
And so I believe in all that stuff, every bit of it.
Wow. Wow. Well, I have another unusual experience
Okay,
about uh, with an animal. Do you want to
okay,
hear it?
sure.
Okay. So I'm a very much a nature girl. I always have been. I always walk barefoot. I always feel happy in nature. I bet you're like that too, Charlotte.
Yes, I love nature.
I figured.
I love
So
being out. Yeah.
yeah. And so I'm as a young woman, I always felt very safe in nature. I didn't always feel safe with people, like, you get raped or something.
Mhm.
And that's what happened in the book. I was with a Navajo friend, and a horrible thing happened. You have to read the book. I don't want to tell it. It's so
Right.
horrible. And
Right.
I rather not tell it this time. And anyway, so one weekend when I was not taking out, guess what? There's an updated, Charlotte. There's an updated, revised version that's better. This is
Okay.
a self-published version.
Okay.
The other one, do you have the cover for it?
I don't have that cover here, but
Okay, but let me tell your listeners, it's the same title, but it has a different cover with an eagle on it. And
okay.
it's updated because this one's self-published, and the publishing, it did so well, the publishing company said they wanted to republish it so they could get wide distribution. And so look for the republished one, and because it has all information about what happened during the pandemic, it's very updated. And um, yeah,
Okay. No
okay.
problem.
So anyway, I took, when I wasn't taking a student out to their home for the weekend, I I drove myself to the middle of nowhere in southern Utah, in a very, very remote area. And there was no habitation, no paved road for miles and miles, where I went deep, deep into the wilderness. And it was just gorgeous with all these fantastic rock formations and everything.
Mhm.
And so, Charlotte, could I look at you? When I talk instead of the
Yeah. Want me
cover?
to hang on. Oh, we go.
Okay,
What
there you
time?
go. Okay, so because I actually get more animated when I'm looking at you.
Go
So,
for it. No problem.
okay, and so this side, I was 40 miles from the nearest road, and I was off road. And if my car had broken down, I would have died. But at that young age, you don't think about those things. And
Mhm.
so I saw this gorgeous, like a sanctuary, rock sanctuary, and it had like a basin, a natural cistern full of water. So I took off all my clothes and got in. Like I said, I'm a nature girl, and I was just having a wonderful time there. And I walked around with no clothes on, and the rocks felt so good. They're so warm. And then the sun started to go down. So I thought, well, I better prepare my bedding and everything. So I got my pad and sleeping bag and put it out on a flat sandstone rock, beautiful rock with all the towers, rock towers all around me. And I finally fell asleep. It was a full moon, so it was very bright, so it's hard to fall asleep. But I finally fell asleep, and I had this dream that was so vivid, that I was with Billy the Gay, and I was in his sheep and goat corral,
Mhm.
and we were trying to separate the billy goats because we didn't want them to mate right now, and they were trying to mate with the females. And they had that really strong odor of pheromones that when you want to mate, the male mammals have this terribly strong acrid smell. And I smelled it so intensely. I thought, wow, this doesn't even feel like a dream. This feels like real life. And then I heard a sniffing sound, and I realized it wasn't a dream. That there I opened my eyes, and in the full moon, right 2 inches from my face, was the mountain lion sniffing me. I
Wow.
could see his tawny hair and his black whiskers, and I thought, I'm gonna die. I almost had a heart attack. I became paralyzed, barely breathing, my heart bounding. I didn't move, and I had my eyes shut tight, waiting for him to rip me apart. And in fact, I remember thinking to myself, I wish he'd hurry up and get it over with. And nothing happened.
Wow.
And I still couldn't open my eyes. I was in absolute terror. And I finally, when it was full daylight, I opened my eyes. And of course, he wasn't there. And of course, there was no tracks because it was sandstone.
Mm-hmm.
But when I stuffed my sleeping bag in, that scent went right up my nose. And it was a male mountain lion. Good thing he didn't, you know,
Wow. Yeah.
mount me or
No
something.
kidding.
I mean, and so anyway, I became obsessed about mountain lions. I asked everybody. I went to all the way to Gallup, 2 hours away to a library to check out books about mountain lions. I said, why didn't he kill me? And
Mm-hmm.
everybody said the same thing. It's because you didn't move. They want things that move. They don't like dead things and they don't like things that move. And I thought I think there's another reason. I don't know what it is. And I kept thinking in my dreams that the mountain lion was trying to tell me something. I finally told Donna Scott, my teacher aide, about that I'm dreaming about this mountain lion over and over, and he wants to tell me something. And so she said, well, there's this grandmother who can tell you. She lives deep in the canyon, and this teacher aide, it's her grandmother. So why don't you talk to her? So I talked to her, and she took me on the weekend deep into the canyon, and she told her grandmother what happened. And then the grandmother, who's very wizened up, tons of wrinkles, shiny, twinkly eyes, very beautiful in an ancient way, and smoking a corncob pipe, she looked right into my eyes in a friendly way. And she said, the mountain lion is your spirit guide. And he came to you to give you his strength, courage, and perseverance. I forgot what exact word she used, but and then she said something very chilling. She said, because you will need that. You're going to be facing some life-threatening challenges. And if they don't kill you, you will have powerful medicine to bring to the people. And it all came true what she said later on. I'm talking about it in book 2 and 3, that I did have some two terrible things that happened to me. I just barely survived them. And I did go on to become a doctor. And those horrible things that happened to me helped me be a better doctor. And so, I mean, her prediction came true to the letter.
Wow. Yeah, see, while you were talking about, that's what I thought was your spirit animal.
You did, Charlotte?
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Do you have one?
Mine, what is mine? Mine's the eagle.
Yours an eagle. Oh yeah, cool. So you think for yourself, right? And yeah, and you see the big picture.
Yeah, I got a friend that it's the Black Panther.
Wow. Whoa.
It's hers. Yeah.
That's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. So lots of and they take the paranormal just in stride. It's no big deal. I mean, they don't think it's anything unusual. It's just the white people, they think it's really like unusual. It's just part of their life. At least 50 years ago it was like that. Things have changed, but I was there at a time where they're very, very traditional.
Mm-hmm. So you were able to participate in obviously their rituals and stuff like that. Was it hard for them to allow you to do that, or was it a gradual thing?
Okay, this is what they said. They said I was participating in ceremonies that white people weren't allowed, and
Right.
and had never participated. And they said that I was my how did they say it? They said it in different ways. They said I was a white Navajo woman, and they said I had a Navajo heart, and they said I was Navajo in some other time.
That works. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you took this stuff, you spent all this time with the Navajo, you became a doctor.
Yeah.
And you were able to incorporate some of what you learned, right?
Oh yeah.
Into your practice.
Yeah, but first I was a mainstream doctor, which was not a good. I mean, yes, I learned an awful lot. I'm glad I did it, but it wasn't my life calling to just give out pills. In fact, Charlotte, I'm going to tell you something funny.
Okay.
I mean, it's actually pathetic. It's the Navajo word for white doctor is a zethini, which means he who gives out pills. And I thought, yeah, that's right on. He who gives out, just giving pills. It's not really healing. It's not really healing, and not getting to know your patients, not trying to find out what's really going on, what's underneath all those headaches and the asthma and feeling chronic fatigue. What is the real cause? It's, and so when I left, and it was one of the disasters that the prophecy, and it was one of those disasters that got me on the right path. So all my bad experiences have been a portal to something much, much better. So for all your listeners, never waste a bad experience, because it can be composted into something you can't even imagine. So it's, don't waste it. And so that I practice what I preached, and I started practicing in a way that was in true alignment with my soul's longing, my soul purpose, is to empower people with information that helps them help themselves, help them. Some doctors want you to feel little, like a child, and they're the father and they tell you what to do and you're supposed to do it. I'm not like that. I say, I'm your ally. I'm not your boss. I'm your ally, and together we're going to get you well. But and so it's all about empowering and using all sorts of tools. Sometimes I do use Western medicine. If somebody has pneumonia, I do give antibiotics, but I only do that when other natural methods are not doing the trick. So I draw on everything, and also I help my patients. I share with them what I learned, that anything is possible, right? And that don't just think in a narrow tunnel. Like what we've been told is not always true. In fact, it's often not true. Like what we're hearing now in the current times, a lot of it is not true. You have to trust your inner wisdom, and you have to use critical thinking. How to use critical thinking? You say, does this make sense? You just ask a simple question. You don't have to be a genius to do critical thinking. You just say, does this make sense? Does this match my own experience? Am I acting out of fear, or am I making a good decision, or am I doing it out of fear? And I train my patients, and I also train to protect them against being harmed when they go to the emergency room and they're told to have every scan and every test, and then dump pills on them, told to have surgery that they don't need. So I give them tools of how to deal with mainstream medicine.
So when you were learning it, like when you were learning this stuff, from the Navajo, did you do extra read? I mean, obviously you had to do some extra research when you brought it into your practice, right?
Yeah. So I used herbs that I learned about when I lived with them, and I was in the Peace Corps, so I learned about a lot of plants from the Andes, from the indigenous people up in the Andes. I was way high up and learned an awful lot about how to live on nothing, how to take care of your health with practically nothing, and so I learned a lot. I learned a lot.
So how do your patients relate to it? I mean, like I said, when I had heart failure, that was my first thought was, okay, I'm done with Western food. I'm going to go to a more, Native American
Yeah,
diet to
that was
try and
so
get
smart,
back on
Charlotte.
track.
That was very smart of you.
And so just, I mean, not everybody's like that though. So how, when you have a patient
Okay,
that,
here's the very cool thing. I
okay,
never advertised. So
okay,
what? Because when you advertise, you don't know who you're going to get. They haven't been vetted. It's
hmm
all word of mouth, meaning that person tells that person, "Oh, you'll really like her because blah, blah, blah. She really listens to you, or she tries to use as much natural medicine or this and that, or she educates you. So they're totally prepped by the time they come to me. They totally know what to expect. So I don't have to deal with trying to convince people. That takes too much energy. And I just tell you something funny. I Los Alamos, where all those physicists live doing, nuclear research and all that stuff.
Mhm.
When my first physicist came to me as a patient, now I have quite a few of them. He was dragged in by his wife. He didn't want to be there. He talked to me with his arms like this the whole time, very hostile body language, and I made a recommendation based on what his wife told me, because he didn't want to talk that much, and so he said, do you have articles to prove what you're saying? And I said, you know what? I bet you don't ask your mainstream doctor for articles to prove that statins are valid for high cholesterol. I bet you've never asked your. And then I said, I think you shouldn't come back, because you're just here because your wife dragged you here. You don't want to be here. So there's no charge for this visit, but I think I'm the wrong person for you. Guess what? He called me about a week later and he said, can I come? Can I be a patient? So he knocked off that kind of stuff.
Right.
And he became a total fan. He reads my blog posts religiously, and then he told his friends to come. So pretty soon I had a lot of, but you see, I didn't have to convince them, because this guy told them that I was legit. Do you see what I mean?
Right. Right. So what types of, just off the wall, it's not, it's obviously not for everybody. We're not trying to sanction, hey, stop taking your pills and do this. We don't
Oh
want to do
no,
that.
I'm not saying that.
No, I know what
take
you're saying. I'm just
Xyrem.
saying, the question I have for you is, what for, can you give me an example of something that you have used that type of natural remedy for? That something that's common that people have.
Oh gosh, for tons of things, but I do use Western medicine. I'm on thyroid medication myself, and so I'm not an idiot. I mean, there's a place for everything.
Sure.
It's just that pharmaceutical industry has predominated and pushed out everything else that's very legitimate and valid.
Mhm.
And that's the problem I have with it. And so, but I mean, there's countless things that I start with the diet, and because I'll have patients who come in with 20 problems. 20
Mhm.
problems. They're tired, they have a headache, they're anxious, they don't sleep well, they have digestive problems and stuff. So we start the whole thing with the diet first, and then we see what we're left with. And then we deal with and then the problem list comes to, might be 3 things, and instead of 20, there's now 3, and then I address those 3 things. But so we start with the diet, you eliminate an awful lot of problems. But diet, though, one size does not fit all. So people who say this diet or vegan or all meat or all this or all that, that doesn't work.
Mhm.
There are few principles that apply to everybody. Eat organic if you can afford it and find it. It's
Mhm.
far superior. The glyphosate, the Roundup, the herbicides are very harmful. Drink filtered water if you live in the US. And so there's a very few basic principles that apply to everything. Everything else needs to be customized. Like some people have nightshade problems, like potatoes and tomatoes, and they get joint pains.
Mhm.
And other people, do great with all that stuff. And dairy is a common troublemaker, whether people realize it or not. And so you try to eliminate the common ones and see if it makes a difference. If it doesn't make a difference, go back to it. Gluten is very common troublemaker, very common. Sugar is a common troublemaker. Too many simple carbs: bread, pasta, crackers, cookies, box cereal, chips. Okay, another principle that applies to everybody is try not to eat processed food. Try to eat whole foods the way it grows. And that applies to everybody. And
Mhm.
so, but beyond that, you have to find the diet that works. So we do trial and error in my practice to get the patient to find what's truly right for them. And then the digestive things go away, some of the fatigue goes away, the brain fog goes away, some of the depression lifts,
Mhm.
and then we deal with what we're left with, and we deal with that with herbs and certain supplements and so forth. And so people come from all over the country. I haven't been taking new patients for 5 years because
Wow.
I'm overwhelmed. I have 1,200 patients, and I'm 73. That's a lot. That's a lot for one person.
Yeah, it is.
And so, but if you go to my website, my blog site, as a public service for all those people who want to see me, and I can't take more patients. I've done all these different blog posts about medical things that they'll never find from their mainstream doctors that are really practical, really helpful, and not the dogma that they're taught. And so it's musings, memoir, and medicine.com. Musings with an S, musings, memoir, and medicine.com. And it's a mishmash of excerpts from the different memoirs I'm writing. I'm going to be writing a total of 4,
Wow.
and it's trips I've taken, but relevant to your listeners is that there's the category under medicine. If you click under that category, I'm sure you'll find something that is very useful, like the osteoporosis, the cholesterol thing, the fatigue, the insomnia, the digestive stuff, and it's not the regular dogma that you're learning. It's stuff that's not pharmaceutical oriented, and I think very, very useful.
Hmm. Coming from your, being white, we'll just use the word white, and seeing what you saw, the miracles, with the kind of medicine that the Navajo were using. Was it hard for you to believe at first?
Yes, 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 it was. I just couldn't believe it. I'd go up to those people and say, "Are you really better?
Yeah.
You know, are you really like, did what such and such go away completely?" And I was incredulous. Yeah, because I've been brainwashed, right?
Hmm.
And so when you're brainwashed, you sort of have to see it over and over to like, wow, this is really happening.
I just find it so interesting. I really do that somebody, I mean, growing up the way I did and hearing the stories, but knowing somebody that actually saw the stuff take place. That's what
Yeah.
fascinates me with you.
I know. I feel so lucky that they accepted me, even though I'm a Biligana. Biligana is their word for white person.
Hmm.
And I got to tell you something funny.
Good.
Their word for Mormons were always trying to convert them. They had poor guys. They had Catholics trying to convert them, Protestants, Mormons, and everything. And some of them belonged to all of them, because then they got free lunches. They got, clothing and stuff like that. Because it was, they just thought of it as practical. But so their word for Mormon was gummily. And I said, "What does that mean?" To one of my, I said to my teacher aide, who was so good with English. And I said, "What does gummily mean?" She said, "It doesn't mean anything." I said, "Well, how did they get the name? How did the Mormons get the name gummily?" And she said, "When the first Mormons came, they're always reading from their Bible. And to Navajos, it sounds like they were saying gummily, 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 gummily."
Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
It's
So
like,
yeah,
yeah,
that's what I mean. I'm so intrigued by you. That's why I'm going to finish your book. I got halfway through it, but I'm so intrigued by you because, like I said, I grew up around, hearing the stories from my mother,
yeah,
but I never saw stuff like that done in front of me. I knew my grandmother was doing it, but
yeah. Don't forget, you're part native. Don't
yeah,
forget that.
yeah. So
And
it's all there.
that's really something to be proud of.
There's still mint growing in my backyard
Cool.
because she was growing mint, all
Oh,
along the perimeter of my yard and everything. So she
oh,
had stuff growing back there
yeah. Wow.
that she was using. And I remember watching her make tortillas. The only person I've ever seen make tortillas and not use a spatula to flip them.
Wow.
She scared the hell out of me. You know, the fan would be piping hot. She'd reach in there and flip them bad boys right over.
Oh. Oh, you got some nice memories.
Yeah, yeah. But I also remember being the grandma. God forbid you touch something that she's working on.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. But I mean, yeah, I got some great memories of watching her. But I wish, I hadn't been so young because I was only like probably 5 or 6 at the time, where I could have sat down and really talked to her and picked her brain about that stuff.
Yeah.
I missed
Yeah.
out on it. But that's why when I heard you on the other show, I was just really into it because I thought, wow, this is kind of like my background in a twisted sort of way, a way off sort of way,
Yeah.
and it was fascinating.
So because you have that streak of Native American in you, it means you can access things that maybe it's harder for other people to do.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. What do you have to say to people that want to look into alternative forms of medicine? Like somebody that's getting treatment right now. Is it something that people should do? Like me, I don't like it when the doctor sits there and prescribes a bag full of pills. And I'm just like, do I really need to take all this?
Oh, like there are there are people like me who are mainstream and really good at what they did, and then they became totally disillusioned. And because they developed some terrible problem, Western medicine was hopeless and just made them worse. So they
Mhm.
left, and then they became like famous, like Mark Hyman from the Cleveland Clinic. He had so much mercury in his mouth from his fillings. He couldn't use his brain anymore. He couldn't practice medicine. His whole life collapsed. And so he went on a big search himself to get well. And his get well search got him well and so excited him that there was this whole different way to get people well, that now he spreads the word. So if you could start by getting in touch with his work as a way to start.
Okay, okay. My gosh, this hour went by so fast. I'm
I
sad it's over.
I know. It's so nice talking to you, Charlotte.
I
I
could
feel,
talk to you for
you know what?
hours.
I'm going to tell you something, Charlotte. I don't care how much blood, native blood, I feel like when I'm talking to you, I feel like I'm talking to a Native American.
Thank you. Well, that's
That,
cool.
that's a big compliment.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I would love to have you on again to talk more because I mean, this just wasn't long enough.
Okay.
If you want, it's up to
No,
you.
no, sure, sure. But take a look at my medical blog posts and
Okay.
see if you find them useful, because
Okay.
it teaches you how to make that transition kind of to more natural stuff.
So what's next for you?
I'm writing. I just finished my second manuscript called "From Mountains to Medicine" and my search for purpose. And then my third memoir is going to be all about telling the truth about what I saw in medicine, and how I came to practice the way I did, my whole trajectory. It's
Mhm.
really fascinating. I mean, how I became practicing the way I do. And then the fourth one is about my son. It's going to be called "How My Son Raised Me."
Cool. Cool, cool, cool. Oh, I just had another question. I thought when you decided to you know talk about the natural stuff with your patients, the other doctors were they open to it?
Some are very, in fact, my patients tell me that they get quizzed by their mainstream doctor, like, what did she do? What did she tell you? And stuff like that. And others just tolerate it. And a few, very rare, but a few don't agree with my approach. But you know, all these guys remember when I was mainstream because it
Mhm.
was still in Santa Fe. So they respect me because I was a respected mainstream doctor. It's just I became totally disillusioned.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. Again, I want to thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too. I
We
enjoyed talking to you.
we have an energy.
Thank you.
I could feel that. And like I said, I really appreciate it. And I would love to have you on again on another day, another time to talk with you some more.
Sure. Until if I was a Navajo, I would call you Shadeja. Shadeja means my little sister. Shit means my. Deja means little sister.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I feel a connection to you too.
Thank you.
There we have
Okay.
it. All right. Well, you have a good evening, and thank
Thank
you, Erica. I've
Thank
just
you.
it was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Good
You have a
night.
good night. Bye bye. All right, that was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And her story's great. Get her book. Remember the one with the eagle, with the eagle on the front, as I was corrected. So I'll have links for all that for you guys. Tomorrow, we're shifting gears. We're going to be talking Coke. No, 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 not that kind of Coke. Get your mind out of the gutter. We're going to be talking to our favorite Coca-Cola guy. Larry Jorgensen's going to be with us to talk about some of his updates to the history of Coca-Cola. That he's been doing more research. He's been hitting the road more to add to his book that he already has out. And he's a very fascinating guy to talk to. You'd be surprised how interesting Coca-Cola actually is. Once you start talking to Larry. I want to thank you guys for coming. We'll be here at 6:30 tomorrow to our normal time. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight to the show. It was a fun show. It was a great show, and I'm always interested in that stuff. In fact, I ran into when we did an investigation with Channel 10 and Evangeline's down here in Old Sacramento. The curanderos actually came out. The Aztecs came out and they were dancing in front of the building, and they were going to cleanse the building. And I went outside, laughed, and I asked them if they would wait till after we did the investigation, and then they could go in and do what they wanted. And they said okay, they would do that. So they kind of hung out till we were done. So that was kind of cool. My mother, it was fun because my mother was with me at that time, and since she couldn't get out and get in the building, she was sitting out in the car, so she got to watch them in their ceremonial dress and everything, and they were giving her sage and all kinds of gifts. So it was nice. Anyway, again, I want to thank you guys for coming tonight. Tomorrow we'll be here again at 6:30 with Coca-Cola guy Larry Jorgensen. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Hit that little button with the little ghost and the Sherlock Holmes hat and the magnifying glass. If you're trying to find us, come on down to CaliforniaHauntsRadio.com. And our sites there, we got all of our show videos are there, along with events that we're putting on and all that good stuff. And even our blog talk, some of our blog talk radio stuff is there. Also, we're going to be updating that. We're going to start putting on more paranormal news and weird news on that page. So you'll get some really crazy stories from around the world. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We're equal opportunity here, and we're trying to get the word out. So the more people you share the show with, the more people that are going to come and watch us. And we're real excited. Our numbers are gaining, and I'm really stoked about it. We just want to get YouTube going to where YouTube's on a roll. Now, sometimes you can't find YouTube, okay? You can type in California Haunts on YouTube. Sometimes it comes up, sometimes it doesn't, even though we have a dedicated link to the site. It just doesn't always work that way. So the best way to do that, if you can't find us, is to go to the radio website at CaliforniaHauntsRadio.com and click on any video on there that has me in it, and that'll take you directly to the YouTube site. So you can check out all of our videos on YouTube. Again, we are nonprofit, and so all this stuff comes out of my pocket, whether it's the internet fees or whatever. And if you can help me out a little bit with that, I'd appreciate it. That's at paypal.me at California Haunts. Or if you are uncomfortable with PayPal, we have a Venmo. You just have to go into Venmo, type in California Haunts, and you can get in that way. But I hate begging all the time for this, but I mean, it's just something that it is. I mean, I'm retired at this point, and I love doing this show. It gives me a chance to do what I did for a living, which is be a journalist. I enjoy it. I'm a journalist, photojournalist, and I want to keep bringing guests to you guys. I just love finding these guests and talking to them and getting information out to you guys. And I love my audience. You guys are great. You come every night, put up with me, look at my face, all that good stuff. Hear my stories about my powdered donuts and whatever. But anyway, I want to thank you guys tonight. And let me click on over here. I'm going to push a button here. Cool. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Jennifer, for coming. Karen Rothstein for coming. Pamela, Marisa, and everybody else that didn't come into the chat room. Thank you for coming and joining us. Everybody else on YouTube that came in, thank you for joining us there. Again, I will see you tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. And here's her information. And remember, it's the book with the eagle. Websites: Musing Memoir and Medicine.com, and VeraKaleyMD.com. And Medicine to Miracles is the book, and it's not the one that I have. It is the one with the eagle on the front. And she also has another book, so let's not get excited here. It's called The Healthy House. It's her second book that she has out. And of course, you can get those at Amazon or at her website, because I saw them on her website. Okay, everybody, I will see you tomorrow. Have a good night. That's what happens to slip in.